What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be talking about a few reasons why you aren't ranking up as fast as you should, some built-in reasons in the game that possibly could be matching you up with bad teammates and how to avoid this, and also some other tips and tricks on how you can improve. So what exactly is preventing you from getting these good teammates? Well, it could possibly be what's called EOMM. For those of you who don't know, EOMM stands for Engagement Optimized Matchmaking. And this type of matchmaking prioritizes keeping players engaged by intentionally fluctuating difficulty levels to provide a mix of easy and challenging matches. Some games that are rumored to have EOMM include Marvel Rivals, Call of Duty, Apex Legends, and Overwatch. This can be argued to exist when you look at certain things in Marvel Rivals. For one, you are winning or losing games, and the score is usually 3-2 or 3-1, and there are a bunch of overtimes. However, sometimes you'll get games that you just absolutely steamroll the enemy, or you get steamrolled, which kind of brings us into the other type of matchmaking, SBMM. Well, what exactly is SBMM? SBMM stands for Skill-Based Matchmaking. This type of matchmaking tries to match players of similar skill levels against each other, even if it means less variety in match difficulty. Games that use SBMM are Call of Duty, League of Legends, Dota 2, Overwatch, Valorant, Apex Legends, FIFA, and Marvel Rivals. EOMM has not been publicly announced to be utilized in any of the games that I know of, but there is definitely evidence that points that could be there. So how does this carry over to your ranked games in Marvel Rivals? Well, this means you might be matched with players significantly above or below your skill level to create a more quote-unquote exciting experience, often leading to frustration and a feel of inconsistency in your performance rather than a fair competitive environment where skill is the primary factor in winning or losing. Essentially, the game might intentionally make you win or lose to keep you playing. This only applies if Marvel Rivals is using EOMM, and the evidence, I'm gonna be honest, does kind of point there, considering that NetEase released a 10-page paper talking about EOMM and how it can be utilized. Well, since this paper is 9 to 10 pages, we won't actually be reading it word for word, but I'll give you a quick breakdown. The objective of this paper is to determine if traditional matchmaking in online games focuses on fairness by grouping players of similar skill levels. However, this approach does not always maximize player engagement, and essentially they want to increase player engagement. There were two key challenges addressed in this paper, the first one being measuring player engagement, in which engagement is influenced by multiple factors beyond just winning and losing, such as player roles and interactions within a team. The second one was combinatorial complexity. Ensuring an optimal match for engagement creates an NP-hard combinatorial optimization problem with nonlinear objectives. For those of you who are curious what NP-hard means, it means a problem is at least as hard as the hardest problem in the non-deterministic polynomial NP class. We won't get too much into the complexity of things, but essentially, according to this chart, if you look here, the higher the amount of input that it gets, the harder it is to have an optimal solution. We won't get too much into the paper here, it's just because there's a lot, but they conducted some experiments with different types of games. There were 3-3 basketball games, 15 versus 15 MMORPG battles, but the findings were that this type of matchmaking, it improved player retention by 1.64% in these SPG games and 7.19% in the RPG battles. This resulted in faster matchmaking times compared to prior games and RL methods. So what does the community think about this? Well, this was posted onto the official Marvel Rivals Reddit page, which I've linked down below, and one of the comments was by FTNTVG. FTNTVG says, what this paper is saying is that to maximize engagement, players should experience diverse roles and skill distributions within their lobbies, because that leads to the least observed churn. For those of you who don't know, churn is the percentage of players who stop playing a game within a specific time frame. So two indirect objectives are, 1, occasionally putting you in lobbies where you might not be able to play your main role, as mix of main and support in one's match history leads to the least churn. 2, the skill gap within a team should be wide, where a theoretical 3-man team should have 1 high-tier player and 2 low-tier players, rather than solving for a fair team where all members on both teams are at the same tier. Both of these don't sit well with me. I want to lock in my main role, play with and against very closely skilled players so no one is either turbo feeding or outright 1v9ing. and play some banger nail biter games. That is fun. What is not fun, but is empirically the highest engagement, is high variance in skill within a lobby and autofilling. I don't want to play with 35% win rate Heartstuck players and carry them to the finish line, nor do I want to play against them and bully them for a free win. Put me with other 80% win rate players and let us duke it out for 80 LP gains. Now I know what you're thinking. There's no way this company, NetEase, as big as it is, could possibly be introducing these different technologies and different patterns and stuff to favor certain players over others just to reduce the turnover times, right? Well, that's kind of what they did. In 2021, the head of NetEase matchmaking actually made a video on GDC Vault, which I've linked down below, talking about how they prioritized certain players winning to have them avoid the experience of churn-inducing win-loss patterns, favoring short matches over long ones. I took the liberty of watching the video and trying to comprehend and understand as much as I could, and it was pretty surprising. Essentially, they talk about the purpose of the artificial intelligence is to, and I quote, ensure the quality of the games, control the losses, malicious behaviors, and assigning robot players when necessary, end quote. Well, has NetEase done this in the past? Well, yes. NetEase has been implementing EOMM and other systems into games with the intention of keeping high player retention, even if it means sacrificing your wins for more losses. Well, how do they do this? Well, here's a direct quote. Its OptMatch gives the matchmaking result that lead to optimized gross player utilities. This quote is interesting because while it doesn't directly state that, oh, we rig it so people win or lose, it shows that in the past, NetEase has made matchmaking to prioritize player engagement, such as purchasing items and requeuing and to reduce turn times, even if it means giving you a statistically worse team. So what is the takeaway here? The takeaway is that while Marvel Rivals itself has not been confirmed to utilize EOMM, there is evidence it could potentially be there. This is especially true given NetEase's history with games such as Marvel Duel, which is pretty well known for using EOMM to influence in-game purchases and churn times. However, this does not 100% mean that Marvel Rivals has the same system, but given NetEase's history with gamers in the law, which I'm talking about the $140 million money laundering that just happened a couple months ago, it wouldn't be a surprise to see a system that rigs your wins and losses within the game. Now, let's say that it is implemented into the game. How do you go around it? How do you still get wins? And how do you beat the system? The first method is to just queue with friends. Queuing with friends will force the game to put you all into a match, and the variables of teammates would be reduced. I recommend playing a few solo queue games and then adding people who you engaged with or played really well, and play together with them if you have no other friends that play Marvel Rivals. The second method is to practice one character and get insanely good at them. I've seen many players in Diamond and above who just one-trick heroes and absolutely stomp lobbies. This could be an effective way to climb if you're in the very low of the low ranks. The third method will have a great many parts. So the first one I want to talk about is macro versus micro. Macro is the larger aspect of the game. Think of it kind of like macroeconomics versus microeconomics. Macro is the larger scale encompassing the entire team and the fluidity of the team, as well as synergy and chemistry, thus resulting in a team's ability to perform well and win. Micro is more the usage of abilities, aim, movement, or side strafing, and other things that are usually the make or break in a 1 versus 1 or 1 versus 2 scenario. Learning how to utilize different parts of macro is very important, and one of these is the push and pull. This is pretty basic, and when you get to higher elos, this is pretty much common knowledge, but in lower elos, I can understand if it's a little bit more complex, so let me break it down for you. Essentially, you want to be playing like water. You want to be fluid around their timers, their ultimates, and everything like that. If they have a Moon Knight, and let's say that you are a support character, you would want to stay out of line of sight of his Moon Knight, shoot the Onks, and also position yourself where you will not get bounced by his Onks off of your teammates. If you know that he has ultimates, then you would want to play a little bit more safe, a little bit more passive, playing around him and not grouping up so he can't kill all of you guys with his ults. Another thing to learn is adjust the map that you're playing on. Learning how to utilize all of the maps and all their advantages, such as unexpected flanks and how to do an effective flank, is pretty important. Knowing how or when the map changes is also very, very important, and this can make or break a game. I've seen many players who utilize, let's say, Wanda, and then they use the Wanda ult, and then the map changes while they're in the middle of the Wanda ult, and then they just get nothing. That is very unfortunate and a waste of an ultimate, so knowing when and how the map changes is very important. The last part of macro I want to talk about is just bad awareness. This could be as a tank player who doesn't realize that his healers are getting dove and then just refuses to turn around, or just not focusing the objective and then suddenly getting C9'd and then losing the game. Additionally, this could also mean that if you're a DPS or if you're a tank, you run out there and then you all of a sudden lose LOS, which is line of sight, from your healers, and you can't get healed anymore. This can also make or break a game, and it's very important to stay aware every time that a fight breaks out, or even if there is no fight. One good habit that I always do whenever I play tank is to always be turning around every so often, every 10 or 15 seconds minimum, to see if my healers are doing all right, to see if I can still see them and they can still see me and they can still heal me. And this can create a winning team. Now let's dive into the micro part. So there's only a few things in micro that I actually want to talk about. Essentially, everything else is just stuff that you learn through playing with time. But the two things are aim and movement. So aim, as most of you probably know, is the biggest aspect that can be improved instantaneously. Whether this be you just play a bunch of matches and you learn a character, and if they're hit scan or if they're not hit scan, you learn the projectile timings and everything like that. Or you download something like Aim Labs, which can work on your aim and greatly improve it. Movement is also pretty tricky, and it can be a little bit finicky, especially with the third-person camera. But essentially, it's just being able to effectively evade and reposition in a short amount of time. There's also been something that's been brought up to my attention today, and that is that NetEase has laid off a large amount of the North American workers and development team today. And the reason why is still unknown. It's quite upsetting considering that the majority of people laid off were developers who specialize in developing game mechanics and other aspects of the game that we, as players, find very enjoyable. I have also linked these articles down below, so if you want to read about it and see what's going on, feel free to check it out. One thing I do find worrying about this is that laying off developers after a successful launch is usually an indicator that the company does not want to support the game long term. Whether or not this is true or not, we'll just have to wait and see. To wrap things up, let's go over a few things we discussed. Firstly, there's a possibility of EOMM within Marvel Rivals, as well as other matchmaking technologies that could be impacting whether or not you win or lose. NetEase does have a history of doing this, so it wouldn't be too surprising. This does not mean that it is confirmed, as there have been no announcements regarding this from NetEase. However, given the history with legal issues, documents released, as well as reputational issues, it can be assumed quite safely to a degree that it is present. NetEase has also been sued by other big gaming companies such as Riot Games, which is owned by Tencent, and the developers of PUBG. NetEase has a history of giving up on games in the long run, so we'll just have to keep our fingers crossed that the indicators here are wrong, as I said before. The other thing we talked about was how to beat the system if it is indeed implemented, and even if it's not, these points could help you rank up to the high rank that you want. These points covered micro, macro, as well as different things to look out for if you want to climb these ranks. Once again, thank you all so much for taking the time to watch this video. I hope it was informative. I apologize for the time delay from my last video, but it took a lot of research. If I'm missing anything, like always, leave a comment down below. I understand there are different opinions about this, so let me know what you guys think down below. If you enjoy this type of content, give me a thumbs up and a subscribe so that next time I make videos, you won't miss out. My name is Panda, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.